Welcome to Pittsburgh Earth Days, the Dirt Podcast, featuring Grant Ervin, live from the Point Park University Center for Media Innovation. Here is your host, Grant Ervin.
Hello and welcome to the next installment of the Dirt Podcast. I'm Grant Ervin from S&B Construction here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're really excited to be here in the studio at the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University in fabulous downtown Pittsburgh. We have a great show for you here today with regards to talking about electric vehicle infrastructure, which has been a hot topic nationally, locally, in fact, globally, I think. And we have two leaders here from the Pittsburgh region who are advancing the charge, pun intended, with regards to electric vehicle car charging in the Pittsburgh region. I have Rick Price with me from Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities, and also Michael Kirvin from National Car Charging. Rick, Michael, good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
How are you all doing today?
Great.
It's good to have you guys here in studio. Maybe, Rick, we'll start off with you. Tell us a little bit about Rick Price and kind of your career trajectory and what brought you to maybe a little bit before your Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities days.
Well, I worked for the Department of Energy, was formerly the Bureau of Mines, and then out in South Park. And I was in research when I first got out, building research units, and I took a detail for 2 weeks to go over to the property area in 1980 and never went back. And I retired from there in 2007 as the property manager there. And one of my duties as a property manager was motor vehicles.
Excellent.
So I can talk about the transition of just petroleum-based vehicles, and then all the way to different alternative fuels, and now eventually they have electric there.
That's exciting. Michael, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your kind of course of history.
My course of history has taken many deviant paths. So I guess where I could start is where I started off with electric vehicles. I was driving what I would call a not very fuel efficient vehicle between New Kensington and Oakmont every day.
Okay. And
it was drinking a lot of gas, and I found out about the Chevy Volt. I went to drive one in Monroeville, and this is back in 2013. The young lady told me to turn it on. I pushed the button, and I said, "Is this thing running?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "You're kidding me." So I was off from there with my first electric car. But a brief background, some time ago, I used to be in radio in this town.
I was going to say, you have the first real radio voice that we've had here on the Dirt.
Cut it out. I'll puke for you. Puking, by the way, means overemphasizing certain syllables. Like at one radio station, it was the Rebel 104.7 hit country.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But anyway, I worked at that frequency 5 times, but that's neither here nor there. But I've been a big advocate for EV driving and also EV infrastructure ever since I met you years ago when I was trying to find a place to park here in Pittsburgh and plug in my Volt, and there were few and far places between back in 2013. And one thing led to another, and I've been volunteering on various entities, like with Rick Price for Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities, the EV Task Force, driving PA Forward, so on and so forth. And now what I do is I offer EV charging solutions with National Car Charging out of Denver. I am currently the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Ohio representative for National Car Charging, and I offer a Level 2 and DC fast charging solutions.
That's terrific. Rick, we heard Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities. We've mentioned that a little bit. Could you tell us about Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities and the work that you guys do there?
Yeah, well, Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities has been around for 27 years. We're part of the Department of Energy's Clean Cities program that's under the environmental energy, renewable energy vehicle technology division in the Department of Energy. we're one of over 75 coalitions throughout the nation. Actually, Clean Cities has been around for 29 years. And so we're here to advocate reduction in petroleum-based fuels, greenhouse gases, and we do multiple technologies. But one of the fastest things moving right now is electric, and that's what we do. I mean, we educate, we do ride and drives. We work with the Three Rivers EVA, which Mike is on as one of the members there. We have Drive Electric Pennsylvania Coalition, which the two Clean Cities organizations, my sister organization, Eastern Pennsylvania Alliance for Clean Transportation, we own the Drive Electric Pennsylvania website, so you can get out to the website and see all the different things about electric vehicles, myths. We have a fleet page and different programs, and we work with the state. We have over 260 folks that are part of the Drive Electric Pennsylvania Coalition. It meets quarterly. We work drastically with DOT on the highways and corridors as well. But we're basically an education organization. We try to help our local. We cover the 33 counties in Western Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And EPAC does the 34 in the East. So we cover the whole state. We work on many projects for the state, but we try to help folks educate as well as try to help them with funding that can move whatever technology they want to move forward for reduction.
Now, who tends to be some of the audience, if you will, that folks that you engage with? I experienced a lot of your support when I was with the city of Pittsburgh, but who are some of the other organizations that you're working alongside?
Well, again, naturally, I mean, when we're talking electric, Duquesne Light, which takes care of a lot of the things here. Pitt, Ohio just did their first 2 Class 7 electric trucks, the first ones ever in Western Pennsylvania, just a couple weeks ago. We have, Giant Eagle's put in charging stations. Sheets have put in charging stations. But a lot of municipalities, too, as well. I mean, the city, the University of Pittsburgh is another big one. They just installed an additional 20 stations because we installed over 73 with 84 plugs back in 2014 that you were part of on the First Avenue and the grant. And then we work with the parking authority. So, it's growing. And as we go on, when we give you some numbers, it's amazing how fast it's growing.
Super exciting. Michael, how about you? National Car Charging, based in Denver, Colorado.
Correct.
You're the Pittsburgh, Ohio guy, point of contact. Tell us a little bit about National Car Charging.
National Car Charging has been around for about 10 years. My boss, Jim Burness, previously was in the solar industry, and he was one of the first partners with ChargePoint 10 years ago to establish a good relationship with them. And currently, we have ports in pretty much every state. Even in Hawaii, we have a venture in Hawaii where my boss has to go over there once every 90 days and check up on the agent in Hawaii. But business is starting to turn around a little bit. A lot of the business that I had in the channel pre-COVID, that kind of dried up, but now those deals are resuscitating. So I have a conversation with RIDC next week where we had a bunch of things that were on the table in Lawrenceville, like the chocolate factory, Carnegie Robotics, various other places that don't have charging stations. And I believe what they wanted to do in Lawrenceville, we're just throwing this around, we're spitballing, about creating some kind of community charging. Where entities like Carnegie Robotics, for example, where they've got that big parking lot, they can install a bunch of charging stations there during the day and have employees use them. Then in the evening, people who live in the Lawrenceville area can walk to that place, leave their car there, charge, and also probably get charged for charging, so they can get a return on their investment. So that's a good thing.
And is National Car Charging truly national, or are they located all 50
states? Yeah, we're
states?
national. Yeah, we have agents in every quadrant of the country.
And in your sense, you're doing both level 2 as well as DC fast charging?
As well as DC fast charging, correct.
Maybe explain that for listeners. What is the difference between a level 2 and a DC fast charger? We're going to be tossing around a lot of different terminology, but maybe we kind of start to level set a little bit for some listeners.
To keep it simple, Level 1 is a regular plug in your house.
Okay.
Like what you plug your cell phone into. Level 2 is faster charging, like a dryer plug. Pretty much everybody knows what a dryer plug is. So when you're plugged in at level 1, like in my car, I have a Tesla. And when you're plugged in at level 1, you get about maybe 5 miles of range per hour.
Okay.
And if you have a car that has a range of 300 miles, it's going to take a while to charge if it's completely empty at 110 or 120. At 240, you'll get approximately anywhere between 25 to 37 miles of range per hour because you've got a fatter pipe. Okay, it's like opening up a spigot. And then level 3 is DC fast charging, where the DC connection is a direct connection to the vehicle, so you can charge much faster. There are vehicles out there right now, like, for example, the Kia EV6. They say it can charge from 10 to 80% in about maybe 20 minutes, which is fast. That's a couple 100 miles in 20 minutes. But the trick is trying to find a charging station, a DC fast charging station when you're traveling that is reliable and that is working.
That's interesting. So we started, before we came on air here, we were talking a little bit about kind of the arc of history, and I thought that might be an interesting place to take the conversation today, because we've known each other for a while, and it's been amazing to see the growth in both the adoption of electric vehicles and kind of where we're at currently and where we're going in the future. And I'd be really interested to kind of hear from you guys, because talk about the early days of electric vehicle charging. And Rick, maybe just start with you, because you've seen a lot of different technologies come through clean cities, whether it's propane or clean diesel, and you've literally had your finger on the pulse of kind of the mobility industry in terms of how we propel our vehicles. Go back to like the early days of EV charging and tell me some of your memories of that.
Wow. The early days is probably back in I think 2013, maybe even 2012. We were approached about, this is when electric charging, there were like nothing. Maybe there probably was 10 plugs in the Pittsburgh area. And we were approached by a group that wanted more charging, and our job was to go out and solicit using a PA AFIG program for chargers.
The Alternative Fuels
Incentive Grant Program, which is used on a tax on utilities, usually $3 to $5 million a year since about 1993. And so we were out doing that, working with an organization, and I think we ended up with somewhere around 19 or 20 organizations. And so, we put a grant in for that, and then we found out that we were able to install it a lot cheaper than we thought. So we started out, I think it was supposed to be for like 52 plugs. And we ended up putting in like 73 plugs with 73 stations with 84 plugs. And we still gave some of that money back to the state. Wow. We were able to do that. So again, people were hesitant because, again, it's nice to put the cart before the horse, because there weren't that many electric vehicles out there.
Right.
It's just maybe back when the Volt was coming out, right? The Prius, right, were the kind of like the two main ones, and maybe the Nissan Leaf were kind of like the three back then. In fact, this nation started out mostly with Toyota on just what we call regenerative hybrids, and there's a lot of them out there right now today.
That's using the braking system.
That's just using the mechanism in the wheel to create energy, a smaller battery to help move that mass forward to do that. But the technology now, I believe there's like 80 some models out there right now, or different brands and models of electric vehicles out there right now, and it's growing vastly. And a lot of companies have committed to nothing but electric by maybe 2030, somewhere around that. But even the state has committed through the Green Gov, their light duty fleet. They want 25% of their light duty fleet to be electric or plug-in electric by 2025.
Michael, what was it like as a driver? You were one of the early adopters with the Volt, and explaining in terms of the different types of charging. But what was that experience like as being one of the early adopters?
Oh, it was pretty much a wasteland here in Pittsburgh. I recall when you and I were getting together and we were trying to get that proclamation put together with Bill Peduto to declare National Drive Electric Week here in Pittsburgh for the very first time. I think that was back in 2014. But honestly, it was a wasteland down here in Pittsburgh because I was driving around and I had an app. Everybody has an app to try to find a charging spot.
Right.
But the only place I could find that was close to your office in the City County building was in USX Tower.
Okay.
And I don't mind walking, to get to a place if I can save money on gasoline. But that was probably the only time I've ever paid for charging at USX Tower.
Wow.
And nowadays in Pittsburgh, that you can find a plethora, that's a GRE word of the day, a plethora of charging spots. And this is the first time I've ever parked in the garage right next door to Point Park.
Here at the 3rd Avenue garage.
But things have gotten a lot better. But most people, when they have an electric car, like when I had my Volt, that had a fairly short battery range because that was an extended range electric vehicle, where the main propulsion system was electricity, but when the battery was depleted, it turned over to the gas generator, and then the gas generator created electricity to drive the wheels, almost kind of like a diesel electric train. But I was just plugging into my front porch with an extension cord, which unfortunately is a solution a lot of people here in Pittsburgh still have if they drive an electric car and they don't have any place to plug it in, so they throw an extension cord out, which isn't really up to code. Plus, it could be a fire hazard. So there are some other solutions that we're working on here in the city of Pittsburgh to maybe do like light pole charging or pop-up poles from the ground where you can just plug something in and charge. So it's a challenge still.
What has kind of led, in both your estimations, I guess, what has led to that next phase, though? You talked about like the early adopters and folks making the switch from a internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle like the Volt, or some of the early types of models. But what led to like that next step? Was it the cart or the horse? Was it putting more cars out on the street or having more charging available? What were some of the things that led to organizations like the Parking Authority or some of the retail outlets to start to ramp up adoption of charging?
And I think the city of Pittsburgh is a prime example. I mean, you took the plunge to say we would like to move the city over. I mean, you did some evaluations on your whole fleet and that, and so you decided when you got municipalities. There's a lot of visibility in municipalities, in large companies that operate in our region. And when people start seeing that, and then the OEMs jumping on, because not only do you want those vehicles, somebody has to produce them.
Right.
And now we're starting to get the commitment from the OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, to put out. Then I was, talking how many are out there now. So now with the NEVI, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the
NEVI is the National Electric Vehicle Initiative,
infrastructure bill, which Pennsylvania gets $171.5 million over 5 years, and they have to develop a plan on how they're going to spend that money. And again, it starts along every 50 miles along the interstates. Within 1 mile of the interstates, having 4 of those DC fast chargers. Now, this is only for DC fast chargers. We can talk a little bit later about the state program for level 2 chargers. But this is going to be that's going to allow people to drive across the United States probably within the next 5 years, and always pretty much be assured that there's going to be a place to charge
without having to worry about range anxiety.
Yeah. Talk about that. Like, range anxiety is a term that gets tossed around a lot. Like, I don't hear people with gas engines talking about range anxiety, but
no, because
I got like 50 miles left in my tank right now. But that's a thing in an internal combustion engine as well.
Well, that's because you can go into a gas station and take 5 minutes and fill up the car.
Right.
With an electric car, it's a little bit different, depending on how much range you have to begin with. A lot of the arguments I get when I go to like a car cruise, for example, at Pittsburgh Mills. Hey, what happens if you're in a snowstorm and you get stuck? And, well, what happens if you're in a gas car and you're in a snowstorm and you get stuck?
Same thing happens.
Same thing,
Right.
but in an electric car, you don't have to worry about breathing in fumes.
Yep.
If you start off with fairly high range, let's say 200 miles.
Yeah.
Where was that backup in, was that D.C. on the Beltway or something?
Oh,
where
yeah.
They had that snowstorm.
Oh,
if you
yeah,
have
it
an
was
electric,
95.
yeah, if you have an electric car and you start off with at least 150 to 200 miles, even in cold weather, if you're just sitting there in traffic, you turn on the seat heaters, and you could just sit there for a couple of days.
Right.
So,
So if you're in a snow embankment off of the interstate, you have a better chance of survival in an electric car. is what you're
correct.
saying.
Plus, you don't have to worry about breathing in
All the
carbon
fumes.
monoxide. Correct.
I think you're going to see a lot of the gas stations and national companies installing charging because they're going to see a reduction in their petroleum-based fuels as more electric cars come onto the market and people purchase that. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of those companies, and Shell's already one of them.
Yeah, Shell bought green lots.
Green lots, and so I got Electrify America with the VW settlement money, and then we have the national organization ChargePoint and EVgo and a number of different things. So I think you're going to see that. But let me say one thing though, that's for long range travel.
Right.
Studies have said that 80% of the people charge at home or work.
80%.
80% of the
Wow.
people charge at home or work. So, just like today, Mike and I parked in the garage right next door, and I drive a plug-in hybrid vehicle. We're plugged in right now, and we go out there. I know I will be because my battery's smaller than it is, and I still had a half a battery when I came down from South Park.
Yep.
So I can come down even without plugging in, get back within a mile of my house before my engine ever kicks on, averaging 80 miles per gallon over 14,000 miles.
Wow.
People don't understand that, but I think I saw on the news just this past week that somebody was interviewing a lady who has an electric vehicle. She says, "Do you know?" He says, "Do you know what the gas prices are?" She says, "No, I don't really pay attention because I drive an electric vehicle."
That's amazing.
And it is. It's not. I think as these become more popular, as the infrastructure gets more popular, and people get away from what Mike says is the range anxiety.
Yeah.
It's going to be. But again, there are now trucks.
The Ford F-150.
The F-150 Lightning, the Ford E-Connect, the like I said, the ones that Pitt, Ohio just bought. Now we got Class 8 tractors.
They were Volvos, right?
They were Volvo VNRs, right?
Yeah.
Class 7.
So that's heavy duty trucking now.
That's pretty big, yeah. Pitt, Ohio is pretty big, but they also are purchasing some of the like the last mile light load delivery, last mile delivery, and that's great for van service.
Plus, some of those vehicles are built right here in Pennsylvania. I think Volvo has that factory in Pennsylvania.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So it's PA made.
Yeah,
That's
it's over on the east, but
a lot of the business for electric car charging, a lot of it's going on within Pennsylvania itself, like Bayer, for example. They provide some of the coatings for vehicles. There's also a company out in Malvern that does Momentum Dynamics. They're working on wireless charging.
Oh, interesting.
Where if you have a boat, you can actually pull up to the dock and just charge right through the dock. You don't have to.
I think that's one of the next
awesome.
things that's coming is maritime, right?
Yeah, we're working with the Port of Pittsburgh. I've been in contact with them a couple times here now because there is money through MIRAD and EPA and the ports, cleaning the ports up. Now here, the Port of Pittsburgh doesn't own any of the them, but there's I want to say there's close to 30 ports along the rivers here in Pittsburgh.
Are they interested in for tugs or for
no, what I'm hearing right now is the ground support equipment.
Okay.
So anything that we can do for the ground support, the cranes, the
same thing at the airport with those vehicles that truck luggage around because those are powered on propane. I don't know if you've ever been on a tarmac, but I was in a tarmac in Vegas a couple of years ago, and those vehicles when they're scooting around, boy, they smell.
Yeah.
But those are able to be electrified also.
Right. And they have some up in Seattle and some of the other areas where some of the airlines are moving to electric tugs and anything it does to movers, the luggage things, all those can run on.
We've danced around this a little bit, but I mean, both you talk about the experience of driving an electric vehicle. I think that's the one thing that I always go back to is the first time you put me in a Tesla out at CCAC West. And I think I got whiplash a little bit because of the quick acceleration. But talk about the experience. I mean, whether it's from the health benefits or the acceleration standpoints, or what's it like for someone who hasn't been behind?
I'm on my third plug-in hybrid that the Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities used to lease for me, and we have now purchased that vehicle.
Okay.
And so we're not only talking the talk, we're walking the walk.
Yep.
And I've got so used to it now that I look to only drive on electric when I can. I mean, I'm lucky if I unless I'm going to Harrisburg or DC or whatever, I probably don't put gas in maybe once a month or once every 2 months, to where I got to think, because of that plugging in every night, 110 socket. It only takes 6 hours on mine to give me 23, 24 miles.
Yeah.
And like I said, I work a lot in here, but everywhere I go, I try to think. And we need to educate people about that. We also need a workforce to work on these things, not only the vehicles, but the infrastructure as well.
Yep.
These things still need to be inspected, to get out there and do that. There are so many jobs connected to electric vehicles that they could do. When we talk about the mechanics, they do teach a lot of that out at the college, the CCAC West Hill Center, and some of our other tech schools around the thing. But now, as part of NEVI, there's a plan in there where they can use money for workforce development. And
Interesting.
It's our intention to be able, the Clean Cities organizations, is to get out to those career technical schools and develop classes that'll give another avenue for future workforce to work on electric vehicles and infrastructure.
Yeah.
Even though the vehicles don't require a lot of maintenance, they're still cars.
Yeah.
So you still have to rotate the tires. You might have to maybe grease a fitting or something, but they're still a car.
And then the side of that too is like they're a piece of technology, right? Like you mentioned, you're driving a Tesla. Like that's a piece of software. Like it's
essentially a computer on wheels.
It's a computer on wheels, right? And so, I mean, what's it like when you get behind the wheel? Like,
it's quiet.
Yeah.
My Cadillac was actually quieter than the Tesla because Tesla is not really known for its build quality.
Okay.
But once it gets on the highway, it's great. The acceleration is astounding. I don't really put it into standard mode, which is the mode that you're talking about that gives you that neck snapping acceleration.
Okay.
That's fun every once in a while, but it gets tired because my neck starts to hurt also.
Right. Like plus the G-forces?
Yeah, plus it also wears your tires down and
Okay.
it also decreases your range. So I try to drive as efficiently as possible. But the main thing I really enjoy is not having to put gas in that thing. Because when I had my Volt and I had my Cadillac, I mean, there are obviously months that I went without putting gas in either of those vehicles. When they were extended range electric vehicles, I could go for like 5,000 miles without putting gas in it. But with the cost of gas nowadays, my wife has a little Fiat.
Okay.
And I die every time I see how much gas is for that because it takes premium.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like sticker shock.
Well, she's got lead foot too. But we can cut that out, right?
That. She didn't hear that. Well, I mean, it's also kind of interesting that when you think about driving practices, I saw we had a statistic a couple years ago. The majority of trips in Pittsburgh are less than 5 miles. So, like, for folks that live, in and around the city proper, this is a city proper statistic, that, if you're going to the store, if you're going to work, there's a chance that trip is, like, between, like, 3 and 5 miles for the majority of your trip. And then even if you go into, like, the first ring suburbs or, like, coming from, like, the South Hills or, Bethel or, like, surrounding areas, you drove
12 miles. I'm 12 miles south of Pittsburgh.
12 miles south of
and
Pittsburgh.
And I still had a half a battery when I got here.
Yeah, so like the idea of like range anxiety for most trips, is that really a real thing?
It can be a thing depending upon where you're going.
Right.
But if you're planning a long trip in an electric car, I'd probably recommend having at least a starting range of at least 200 to 250 miles.
Okay.
Which is about the delta where most of these newer cars are coming in at. And
at around 250.
Around 250. And one thing I would like to say is a lot of people complain about the cost of electric cars being very high. It's always a good idea to try to find a used one, because these used electric cars will go for at least a couple 100,000 miles before you have any problem with the battery.
Wow.
Yeah, we were. I mean, I know instances where electric vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles, the batteries in the United States are guaranteed from 100,000 miles, 8 years, 100,000 miles. So, I know ones that have been 13 years and with very little degradation to the battery. And people don't realize how the battery is set up. Sometimes you don't have to replace the whole battery.
You can replace a cell.
You can replace a cell just like you do on that. So, people say, "What? That's the big thing. Well, what's it going to cost me when it's done?" Well,
$50,000.
Yeah, even the regenerative hybrids have batteries in it, and I know people that haven't had to mess with those either.
And not only that, they are recycling these batteries now.
Right.
There's companies that are starting to come out online to do that. Right?
There's a lot of metals. They can, maybe your iPhone or your iWatch or whatever probably has something from some of those batteries.
One of the things that you're just talking about used versus new, but there's also a lot of incentives out there, right? So what are some of the things for someone who's interested in buying a car?
Well, I mean, we're fortunate in our state because we have the alternative fuel incentive grant program for cars.
Yep.
And you can get some infrastructure there if you tie it into fleets. I think 10 vehicles based on different weight classes. But yeah, I mean, there's a $750 battery electric credit. I think that's new or used, if I remember
from
correctly.
the state,
from the state as an individual, not as a company, but as an individual, you can do that. That used to be $3,000.
It was $3,000
just a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's how much that's being used. I don't have the numbers in front of me of how many times that's been used across the state. But just think about it. We're almost 20. As January, we're almost 24,000 electric vehicles in Pennsylvania registered. So let's just say a quarter of those used that program. That's a lot. And like I said, and with the plug-in hybrid and hybrids, I mean, we're sitting about over 80,000 vehicles, and as of January of this year, and those things are just jumping every month as new thing. But it's our job to educate these folks. Mike and I do a lot of ride and drives. We work with the Three Rivers, EVA, the Drive Electric Pennsylvania to hold these ride and drives and educate. So there's no better advertising than people who actually drive it and they can sit there and talk to you.
That's what we call getting butts in seats.
Getting butts in seats. That's like the number one strategy.
Yeah, because once you actually get behind the wheel and drive one, you probably don't want to go back to a gas vehicle.
Well, I was going to ask you that about when you drive your wife's Fiat.
I'm driving it like this.
Well, yeah, you're a pretty tall guy, so you're kind of packed in there. But do you notice from the sound differential, even does the air quality change or
Well, when I start it up, it smells.
Yeah.
But after it's been running a while, it's okay. But it's just slow.
So you actually notice the fuel, the sense of the fuel. Wow. That's kind of...
Yeah, I even bought an electric lawnmower 5 years ago because for the longest time I was pushing behind a gas mower and you're sucking all that stuff in. And then you go to an electric mower and you don't have to worry about going to the gas station and fill it up. You just take out the battery, set it down for 20 minutes, you're ready to go for another hour.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they're making everything. We didn't talk much about 3 to 5 miles in the city, but another program and another thing that's going on is electric bikes, electric scooters.
Yep.
Everything electric is moving thing, and it's cleaning the air.
Yeah. And
it's allowing people to another mode of transportation.
Yeah.
The Port Authority with their electric buses.
Yep.
And it's the bus rapid transit, there's more on order. And I admire what the city has done, too, because they've made a commitment and they've moved forward. And I know they have a lot on order for this year. Hopefully they're able to get them in.
It'll be a game changer, I think, for a lot of the, uses, right? Like you mentioned the OEMs, one of the things that was the challenges in the very early days of this that I saw was the manufacturers weren't making the vehicles. Like, whether you're a city or a fleet manager, or, the general consumer, and you wanted the product, but you couldn't get access to it. But what you're seeing now is just this this waterfall of new vehicle types coming available. You're talking about micro mobility, transit, but also kind of light duty is now starting to step into medium and heavy duty types of equipment. What are you seeing there for some of like the fleet operators? Like we talked a little bit about Pitt, Ohio, who's been a guest on the Dirt podcast on the heavy class, but are there other things in that mid-range that are starting to come on board?
Oh, sure. I mean, like you said, the class 5, 6, and 7. There's a number of manufacturers now. I think Roush is one of them also, and the famous Roush family from racing now makes electric, and they've partnered. But all the different modules that they have for platforms, I should say, that they have for vehicles, where you can just the base and you can put it on, and they have different GDWR ratings for those type of things. So I think there's something out there, and for every type of transportation that you want to do, whether it's last mile delivery, medium range, within state, multi-state, and the infrastructure, a lot of those places are now, they go depot to depot.
Yep.
And so you have chargers at those depots, boom, and a lot of those are in the environmental justice areas and things like that that a lot of the NEVI money, some of the NEVI money has to be spent at.
Let's get into that for a second too. Like Mike, you guys are working at National Car Charging on the installation side, and Rick, you've had a lot of experience with this, but talk about some of the both the challenges and the opportunities with regards to installing the EV infrastructure. Like this is I remember experiencing this at the city in terms of location, and you need to have the stars perfectly aligned because you're creating something that never existed before in many cases. Maybe talk about some of your project experience that you've seen. What's working, what's not? What are some of the hurdles that we need to get over?
Well, some of the hurdles are, I guess, location.
Yeah. Location, because
the closer you get these charging stations to where the electricity actually comes into the building, that can reduce your cost. Also, a lot of companies are looking at installing electric car charging stations as an amenity, like hotels, for example. I'm planning a trip back to Connecticut shortly in September for my 50th high school reunion, and one of the things I use is Booking.com because you can filter on whether or not those locations have EV charging stations. So that's kind of important, being able to plan your travel. I forgot where we're going with this, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, location, and one of the things.
Okay, all right, I'm back on track. When you install an electric car charging station, for example, at a Target location, that increases what they call dwell time. So if I'm somebody with an electric car and I see that they have one at Target, I'm going to stay there longer because I know I can get some charging. And you can establish a policy where if I'm sitting there for an hour and it's for free, and then you have good signage up, which is important because a lot of these spaces get iced. So you can say, well, you can park here for 1 hour free, and then after that it's $2 an hour. Or whatever the rate is. So it incentivizes people to come to your location. Also, it attracts good workers.
Yeah.
Because, if you're a worker for, like, example, at Hazelwood Green at Mill 19, well, I work at Motive. I, work in the autonomous car space. I want to make sure I have a place to plug in my electric car when I go to work, and I want to do it sustainably and charge off those solar panels that are at Hazelwood Green.
Yep.
So it's another attraction.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I think, is maybe worker retention too. I was at a trip a couple years ago in Salt Lake City in an area where they had a number of businesses, and the one company put in 50 chargers in the industrial park, and everybody was able to use it. But he also gave incentives to his employees and gave them money to buy an electric vehicle. And when we traveled over there on bus, and one of them was an electric bus, and we traveled over there, I mean, I seen probably 13 different brands of cars there in there. But everybody in that whole industrial park had the ability to park to charge up there, and that's something I think Hazelwood Green would be a great thing like that. Just think about these parking areas where companies park, and sometimes they shuttle their people to the airport. Out at the airport, there's that local transportation that go within, I think, 5 miles of the Robinson Mall. I think it's ACTA, right?
Yeah.
And just think about putting those on electric, and those people could turn around in there, and you could take them to work if they didn't have charger. But you're driving an electric. That would be a great project to do that.
And they're predictable routes, right?
And I'm sure we have some of the same things in the Oakland area.
Oh, for sure.
I just saw an Access dropping somebody off here by the garage there. I mean, why not Access?
One of the things I think that is contagious about this is that once you get these thoughts in your mind, you start to see how the transportation system works. And then these ideas start to become very intuitive, right? Like you mentioned the ACTA example or the shuttle services. And now that the vehicle types are becoming available, it starts to require the infrastructure to put it in, right? And this is something we're super interested in at S&B USA, where I'm at, because as an infrastructure provider and a builder and a financer of effectively anything on the horizontal plane, where it's a road, a bridge, renewable power systems, locks and dams, we're seeing this also as kind of an opportunity, both from an investment standpoint, but also in terms of the workforce. And you were mentioning this, Rick, the need to kind of build that capacity. It's not just the vehicle, but it's those technical systems that are required to install the infrastructure. We've talked a little bit about NEVI, but that's maybe just to peel that back a little bit. So with regards to kind of this workforce development opportunity, NEVI's let me see if I test my $7.5 billion.
NEVI's $5 billion, and then $2.5 billion go to the NEVI program, and then there's another 2.5 that'll be coming out later this year that can be bid on by the whole United States on projects that can be that aren't tied to the NEVI money.
The first tranche is for state DOTs, right? Like that's
but they have to have a plan, and we're helping them with that plan. We also sat in when they spoke to about 9 or 10 different organizations. In fact, we just spoke with DOT up at Hershey at the PA Association of Township Supervisors, over 400 people.
PSATs.
We were sitting, so we actually sat in. We had one from DEP and one with Clean Cities and DOT. We had standing room only in our sessions, over 120 people in each room. And they're wondering, again, you have some of your naysayers, what about this, what about that? But remember, anything on the infrastructure, Michael verify this, I'm sure, when you're thinking about moving to electric and infrastructure, you need to get your utility involved. Yep. You need to get your utility involved to make sure you have the capacity to do what you want to do, and then plan ahead, plan out. I mean, you had that same thing there on 2nd Avenue, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you knew you needed a big upgrade there to get what you wanted.
It's exactly it. And that you mentioned earlier too about Justice 40, which is a component of the NEVI program. And so you're looking at I'm interested in your guys' thoughts in terms of some of those challenges, particularly in like rural communities and urban communities where the infrastructure might not be there, right? Because the existing grid capacity is old or hasn't been upgraded or hasn't needed upgraded. But now, in order to service that, we're going to have to make those types of adjustments. I mean, how do we do that? What's your big ideas, I guess?
Well, we're working on a project right now, a Federal Highway Administration project it's a planning grant from New Jersey to Iowa. And Interstate 80 has a lot of rural up across it. And so, what some of the organizations, and we just had a meeting yesterday from 5 different states, DOTs and Clean Cities coordinators and Argonne National Lab, they're reaching out to their utilities and asking to give us some maps along I-80 to show us what kind of infrastructure is where.
And where
because
those
I think
gaps
there's
are.
going to be, I think there might be, and I'm talking with an organization right now. I need to find out a little bit more, something more about a portable thing or a demo type thing that runs on another alternative fuel, but creates electricity.
Like a battery storage type
That's
of device?
exactly what it is. But, to get to the 150, 600 kilowatt up there, but they also sell a mobile unit. Now it runs on propane, the generator.
Right.
But another clean fuel, and if you get renewable propane, very clean.
Right.
But you're producing electricity that could do that, or something for a AAA truck. You talk about a car breaking down. This truck could come up and boom and give you enough shot to get you to your charging station.
You mentioned kind of the concept in Lawrenceville, and maybe for folks,
like community charging.
Community charging. I mean, similar. Like that's a great rural solution, but do the same things apply in dense urban areas where, I always used to get this, well, can't we put a charger, on my block? And I'm like, well, then we're going to have to break up fistfights for who's on the charging, right? And you don't have a gas pump in front of your house either. So is that, what are some of those thoughts in terms of like dense urban environments that could be also other types of solutions?
Well, I've seen a lot of solutions over in Europe that seem to be working. Like I was talking earlier, these light pole chargers that attach to a pole, where they've retrofitted LED street lights.
Yep.
They actually have pop-up things that are buried in the street, and they pop up and you plug something into your car.
That's interesting.
That's unobtrusive. But it's a real challenge to get things done in a dense urban environment because there's not a whole lot of places to park your car.
You never know what lies beneath either.
Yeah, especially in like New York City, for example. It's absolutely impossible. But they've actually improved the infrastructure in New York City, but it's still expensive to drive a car in New York City.
Right. So we're up against time here, and I wanted to, maybe finish off with one big question for each of you. I mean, so we've seen this arc from like the 2012, 2013 in the very nascent stages of putting chargers at what was it called? The electric gas station at Carnegie.
The electric garage.
The electric garage.
Yep.
To now having, hundreds of plugs across the city and new technologies coming on very rapidly. And I'd be interested, what are your thoughts in the future in the next, 3 to 5 years? What are we going to see in terms of electric vehicles, both here in Pittsburgh, but I think across the marketplace?
Well, it's going to grow, and I think you're going to see more municipalities, more companies be able to fit that in because they can't sit and deal with these price things that are going on when you're pretty much pretty steady with the electric side of the house. You're not going to get those vast charges changes as they do with the petroleum based fuel and what's going on around the world. I mean, we're here; it's within our own thing. There's renewables that can be used. Like you said, solar, wind, other opportunities. So I think you're going to see it continue to grow. You saw what it grew from 2019 to 2022. I wouldn't be surprised to see that grow that same amount in the next 2 years. I think we could be. I mean, our goal to drive electric Pennsylvania is to get 100,000 electric vehicles on the road in Pennsylvania. Now we said by 2025, we already got 25,000. We may, I mean, I think as the models come out, the infrastructure goes in, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Michael, what are your thoughts? Next 3 to 5 years, what's coming up ahead?
Next 3 to 5 years, who knows? I'm projecting that batteries are going to be costing less. I'm predicting, let me get my Carnac hat on. I am predicting that solid state batteries will be a thing in about 5 years. When you can create a solid state battery, you're going to have a lighter battery. So if you have a lighter battery, it goes into a car that can go further because you have less mass. So when you have less mass, you can go further, and it'll also take faster to charge.
That's That's a good
the
prediction.
thing. That's the thing.
Thank you, Mr. Karnak.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to thank you guys so much for coming into the Center for Media Innovation here at Point Park University, into the studio with us. This has been an amazing conversation. I really enjoy it. Thank you for your service and what you guys are doing to help advance the cause of vehicle electrification across Western Pennsylvania and the surrounding tri-state area. So,
Grant, can I get a plug-in for the Allegheny Solar Fest coming up on June 18th?
There you go. That's how you do it. Allegheny Solar
at
Fest
Mill
coming
19.
at Mill 19, and I guess we'll see you guys there.
You betcha. Be there with bells on.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. Rick Price from Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities, Michael Kirvin with National Car Charging. Thanks for being a guest here on The Dirt today. We appreciate you and the work that you do. And thanks to everybody for listening in. Thanks to the crew here at the Center for Media Innovation for production and the team from The Dirt podcast. We'll check you out on the next episode. I'm Grant Ervin from S&B USA, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks.